Today I'm talking to Michael Zipursky from consultingsuccess.com. Michael, tell us a bit about yourself and what it is that you actually do.
Yeah, great to be with you, first of all, Debbie, and thanks for having me. So we work with entrepreneurial consultants, helping them to build more profitable, scalable, and strategic consulting businesses. My background is the last 22 years building consulting businesses myself around the world and working with clients globally. And about 13 years ago, we decided that we wanted to really support the community of consultants and people who wanted to become consultants to help to be more successful by sharing what we'd experienced, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there was a lot of, all of those things. And so we started sharing that through articles and content with no clear real monetization or business plan behind it as we are running other businesses. And when I say we, am referring to my cousin and co-founder, Sam. And today we have, a much larger team, but we start off just the two of us. And people said, this is really great content and articles. Do you have a course to teach us how to become successful consultants? And at that time we didn't. So we said, well, we'll create one. And so we did, and that went well. And then people said, this is great that you have a course, but can we work with you more closely? And we said, well, we don't have a coaching program, but we'll create one. And so fast forward, here we are 13 years later, and we've had hundreds of consultants, I think over 500 now, go through our Clarity coaching program. We've had thousands of people go through our Momentum online program for early stage consultants. And we're just focused every day on helping consultants to become more successful.
Wonderful. And there's something I picked up there, which is you waited till the demand, you were actually demanded to provide these services. They demanded they wanted a course, then they demanded they wanted coaching, rather than you try and force something on to a market. So how does that work for you? How do you get that relationship with customers and clients where they're comfortable and confident? So like, actually, we want to work with you a bit more about this. We want more.
Yeah, you give before you try and get. You lead with a relationship, long-term mindset, where the goal and kind of the North Star is always thinking, well, how can you just deliver value without the expectation of receiving something in return? And that sounds maybe quite beautiful, or and I don't think the intention was always necessarily that pure. I am a capitalist at heart, or at least in the early days, my younger years, I was very much focused on money and revenue generation. Over time, that's become much less of a focus. But I think we always just tried to help. One of the things that for us was beneficial is we had actually at that time, I was running a consulting business. Sam was working a different job. And so we had other sources of income while we were building consulting success. So we didn't feel the pressure that we had to make it work today. However, it was born out of the idea that we both wanted to come back again together to work on another business, because we had built and sold other businesses in the past together. And we really wanted to be able to live and work from anywhere. The idea of travel and continuing to see the world was really important for us. And so we wanted to create a business online together this time. And so we did feel a bit of a sense of not necessarily urgency, but we were working on it with a lot of intention. And the market pretty quickly spoke and told us what they wanted help with, what they liked, what they didn't like. And luckily we were listening. And so we were able to listen and then take that feedback and implement and test a lot of things. And some things worked and some things didn't, but we kept on going.
Well, it sounds a bit like a fairy tale journey almost. Like, here I am working with my cousin, and then we did this, and then the market said this. I mean, seriously, I know you've already said the good, the bad, and the ugly. So tell us some of the things that haven't gone so well and what you've done to actually recover from them.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, let me maybe take us back a little bit further, just because the truth of the story is that it was not necessarily a fairy tale. I haven't had the experience of going bankrupt or massive jolts of that nature that some people have experienced. So I feel fortunate for that. But I've had to hustle. I've had to work very hard. I've gotten up early and stayed up late, had very long days working on the business. When I was in Japan building and opening up one of our branch offices over there, it was very challenging, not only from a cultural perspective, a language perspective, but I was also in my 20s, being surrounded and working with people who were in their 50s and 60s, in some cases even older. And so, the imposter syndrome certainly crept in. It was a challenging time. I was working on many different things at one point to just try and support myself to really make it successful. But things came together. So I just want to be clear that, and very transparent, that it wasn't always easy. And still, even today, it's not necessarily easy. I mean, I think entrepreneurship is one of the greatest kind of risks that you can take, but you take that risk because you know that the upside potential is, it's infinite. There's so much potential there. And that's why you go down that path. So I've certainly enjoyed the journey, but it hasn't always been easy. So that's the first part. Now you asked for, some failures or some missteps. And what I said to you, Debbie, before we hit record is there isn't one, because like we literally have, I don't like to call them failures. I just call them learning experiences, because I don't view them as being something negative, but they happen all the time. And so I'll give you one example, which is, this was actually a previous business that we built and sold several years ago. And it was a kind of a job site specifically for marketing and design and creative related jobs in Canada. And it was one of the top sites in Canada. And we were always looking for ways to grow our reach beyond what we were able to kind of muster ourselves. And we found a newspaper who had a business focused newspaper that had hundreds of thousands of monthly readers, like really, pretty significant distribution. And we struck a kind of an arrangement with them where we would be able to be featured in their newspaper and get regular ads without having to invest any money to purchase those ads. And so there was no downside really for us, but pretty significant upside potential. And we did I did what I think many entrepreneurs do and are guilty of, which is you start to get very excited about what the future looks like. And so in my case, I started dreaming and talking about with my cousin Sam, like, imagine if, when this happens, well, it's like, we're going to reach so many people, and well, this is what we're doing right now. Like we'll definitely be doing double that. And, so you get really excited about all these ideas. You kind of paint the future to a very rosy kind of ideal picture. But the reality is oftentimes it doesn't work out that way. And so our case, when we launched it, we literally saw like nothing, like it was negligible. And we didn't give up on it. We kept trying to make it work, but it did not perform the way that we had expected. Luckily, we were able to kind of reverse that arrangement in a form that was satisfactory to both parties. But that, I think, is a very common challenge that we all face. We get excited about a potential of something that could be big, and we then take our eye kind of off the ball or off what's already working for us. And then when something doesn't work, we think that, sometimes we believe that, we look at that in a negative way. In our case, we saw that outcome wasn't great, but it didn't stop us. It didn't slow us down from moving forward. So that would just be one thing that I would put out is, always, it's great to look for big opportunities and partnerships and strategic alliances, but you should never do that in a way that it takes you away from you working on doing the things that are already working for you. And oftentimes just trying to figure out how you can do more of the things that are working for you is much better than trying to do something new.
I love that idea. And I want to ask you a question there, because you said we didn't give up on it. When do you know to give up? If something's not going right, actually, how do you evaluate it to an extent that it's right to give up or to change or to pivot or whatever MBA word you want to throw at it? But how do you know when to give something up?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really great question. And I don't think I have necessarily the best answer for that. I can just speak to what we do. And even today, we'll try things and they won't work. And in some cases, after trying them once, we'll just look at it based on the results and go, yeah, that really didn't work. Here's probably why it didn't work. And then it's a question of, is it worth our time, our energy, our resources, the investment to try and figure out how to make it work? Or is there a better place to put our attention, our resources, our time, and our investment? And so we'll try, for example, something from a marketing perspective and go, okay, we've heard this has worked for somebody else. We think this should work for us. Let's try it. And then if it doesn't work, we may continue trying, we're not going to give up, and we'll keep battling through until we can improve or or get clear on whether it'll work or not. But sometimes we'll look at it and just go, yeah, that was an experiment. And it just doesn't seem like it's the right thing for us to continue putting more resources into when we have some other path that already is working better for us, or that we feel is worth a test. And so we're constantly testing new things. We're trying new things. It doesn't mean that everything works. I mean, in many cases, things don't work. And what's interesting about building businesses, and especially from a marketing perspective, is you can try things, and sometimes the things that you're doing don't give you a result. They don't show you the sign that they're actually working in the short term or immediately. And I think that for many entrepreneurs these days, we're used to instant gratification. We're used to seeing the impact, sending a text and getting a response back, or typing something into Google and instantly getting the results. So we're used to having that impact and that result so tangibly and clear in front of us instantly. Well, with marketing and building a business, it takes patience, it takes time. And so what we've also become, I think, more attuned to over the years is the understanding that as long as you really are leading with, delivering value, and I'll give you a quick example of this. So a little while ago, I started doing a live stream on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. So every Tuesday, so actually today at 10 a.m. Pacific, I do a live stream on those three platforms. Well, when I do those right now, because it's only been probably 3 weeks since I've started this consistently as kind of a show, the Consulting Success live stream, it's not a huge attendance. And if I compare that to, for example, the podcast, the Consulting Success podcast that we have over 45,000 people that download that every month. And, but it didn't start like that. So I know that when we started the podcast, we also didn't have massive growth right away. It took years to establish. Same thing with this live stream. But I know the live stream is providing value to people. But if I just looked at the metrics, I go, yeah, this is not really, it hasn't caught on yet. Maybe this isn't the right thing to do. Maybe we should give up and, go and do something else. But I know that because we're leading with value, it's going to impact people. And there's just slight little adjustments that we can play with there to get more people to show up, to get people to interact and to engage more. And then I believe that it'll be a very valuable asset. Now, I could be wrong. And, in a few months from now, we might relook at it and go, well, does this make sense? But my belief is that for now, anyways, we're on the right path and track, and that with a bit of patience and just commitment and kind of dedication to work through it, that we'll figure it out and we'll turn it into something very valuable for all parties.
Yeah, I love that idea. And the thing that what I always say to my clients is that you need to put some constraints onto things. If that constraint could be how much money you're going to spend or how much time you're going to spend. But if you're going to do it, you have to do it. You have to really take that leap and do it the best you can, because otherwise you just put in artificial constraints. You're like, I'm going to do it for 3 weeks, but I might not like it, and I might give in because I just don't like it. I always say, you've got to do it to the best as you can, but put constraints on it. Maybe I'm going to do it for 3 months or a year. One of the things you said earlier was whether it feels right. So how do you balance the logical bit of your world and the feeling bit of the world? Because there's real it can be sometimes, for me certainly, there can be sometimes a bit of problem there.
Yeah, I mean, this is something over time probably have become better at. A few things that I think help. One are having other people that you can bounce ideas around. So whether it's with Sam or other members on our team, whether it's working with our own coaches or mentors, or whether it's just talking with other colleagues and people who also run successful businesses, and sharing ideas. Like just yesterday, I spoke to a friend who runs a very successful company, and was asking him about his perspective around something that we're thinking about doing, because he's already done it before. So that can help to kind of provide a bit of clarity or a different perspective to know how to filter through things. And I think there's nothing more valuable than talking to somebody or engaging with somebody who's already been where you want to get to, because they can tell you what they've experienced. It doesn't mean that it's going to kind of extrapolate and be 100% identical to what you're going to experience, but you can really get some great feedback from that. So part of it, I've learned to trust my gut more than I did before. My intuition, I've learned, is something that tends to be quite accurate, even though I probably didn't give myself the kind of, not the respect, but I didn't give myself the acceptance, or I didn't really believe in my intuition. But over the years, as I started to really think more about that and talk to different people and do some assessments and things of that nature, I've recognized that my intuition tends to be quite accurate. So just learning more about myself, becoming a bit more self-aware, and then tapping into external perspectives helps to form the approach and around how to make decisions when it comes to those constraints. And, you know, at the end of the day too, Debbie, it's your life. Like, you know, you don't, I would say, I don't want to spend time doing things that I really don't enjoy. And now, does that mean that every single thing that I do, you know, at all times during the day is stuff that I absolutely love? No. But if I know that there's a reason why I'm doing it, and I have a path to make things better, then I'm willing to go through some of those challenges or some of the things I don't necessarily love, because I know that it'll create more freedom, more flexibility, strengthen the business, strengthen the brand, and provide a lot more value to everyone.
Brilliant. So another question for you. Is there anything in particular that's gone like so surprisingly well, you just didn't expect it was going to go that well, and it surprised you? Is there anything that's been a surprise recently?
Like you said, go well?
Yeah, go well.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's confessions, but we're going to talk about go well too. I mean,
yeah, no, okay. That you caught me off guard. I was like, okay, do you want? And so, good stuff. Yeah, you know, it's giving me like I'm pausing as I'm processing this, because I'm a very optimistic person. So I think I would tend in some ways to look at any initiative that we have and kind of cast a pretty optimistic view on it of what it could be. But I'm also, I would say, realistic or conservative at times. Like I might go, okay, we're going to do this launch this new product, and you know, we're going to do $100,000 during this initial launch. And then the reality might be that we maybe do more, maybe do a little bit less, but it doesn't bother me. I don't take it personally. So I'm optimistic about all the, you know, most of the things that we do. You know, so if I think about, one program that we launched probably 2 years ago now, after taking it off the market, completely re-engineering it, really getting it up to the standard that we wanted to make sure that we could deliver the experience for new clients, and really help them to create consistent results. When we launched that, like it was a really successful launch and probably much bigger than I would have expected. But it's not that I went into it thinking like, oh, this is not going to be anything, and then it was something. The optimistic side of myself was like, yeah, no, this is going to work very well. And it worked out it just so happened that it worked out even better than probably what I expected. But I always view things in a positive light. I will think about what could potentially go wrong. And as long as I'm okay with that, then we'll typically move forward and see how it does. But business is all about trying things and seeing what works and what doesn't work, and learning from that. And as long as you're learning from the things that go well, and then you tend to lean more into those and do more of them, or you identify things that don't work as well, and you either decide to cut and remove those, or you find ways to improve them, as long as you're doing that consistently, you're just going to get better and better and stronger and stronger. And ultimately you're going to reach, you know, the levels of success that you probably never even would have dreamed of when you first got started. So that for me is one of the most interesting things about business, is that it's kind of like this, you know, petri dish of, you don't like exactly know, like it's always growing things and you get to try things. It's like a science experiment with so many different moving parts. And you're early in kind of an entrepreneur's journey, that kind of variability can often cause a lot of anxiety, fear, and stress, and get you to start to doubt your self-worth or your self-esteem. Certainly can impact your level of confidence. But as you start to move further and further down the path and gain more experience, you recognize that those feelings don't necessarily go away. Like you still will have worry, you still will have fears, but you know they're part of the plan. Like they're part of the game, and you just channel them into knowing, okay, I'm worried about this. Why am I worried about this? Okay, well, what do I do now to hedge? What do I do now to reduce risk? How do I shift this? Is there another opportunity I'm not seeing? And you play with this game, and then you come out going like, oh, okay, and now I feel much more prepared. Like this probably won't even happen, but if it does, now I have a plan of how to handle it. And I've actually discovered a whole other approach that is actually even more exciting than when I first thought. And like, so you go down those paths. And for me, that's probably one of the most exciting parts of business. And so I know I probably took your question and did like 3 right turns, 3 left turns. I'm taking us all over the place, but also I'm going to bring it back to you, Debbie. You can get me back on track.
I will actually, but it was really good because it brought you back to something you said earlier about this idea of imposter syndrome. And it seems a bit like popular at the moment, a bit fashionable to say, oh, imposter syndrome. But I think all entrepreneurs, I don't know, all my clients certainly have a doubt, no matter how many years they've been in business, no matter what size clients they've worked with or how big their business is or how many businesses they've sold, there's tiny bit of doubt there. How do you march forward with those tiny little bits of doubt? And the second part of that is, how do you manage the risk? So what's the sort of, how do you balance the risk assessment and the risk process with that?
So the first part is having a very clear reason and a very clear why. And I'll give you an example of this. So probably about a year ago, I was talking with one of our clients in our Clarity coaching program, and she's very, very good at what she does. Came off a great career and working with some large organizations, actually in the nonprofit space. And she was hesitating to market her business, right? So she was bringing in clients and all that, but like she wasn't doing what she knew she needed to be doing. And this is something that a lot of people face because, I mean, marketing sales is not something that a lot of people love doing. Like, you feel uncomfortable doing it. You don't like to promote yourself and talk about yourself, but it's a necessary part of building a business. And so I said to her, why did you leave your cushy corporate job to start your own consulting business? And she was already now several, months into it. I was like, why did you do that? Well, she said, because I want to spend more time with my kids. Like, I want to have more of that. I was like, okay, so next time when you're looking at your schedule, so even like later today or tomorrow, and you need to be doing these marketing activities, these sales activities, and instead of putting it off, just remind yourself why you're doing this. You're not doing it for you. The marketing and the sales stuff is not for you. It's for your kids. It's for what you want to create. It's for the memories. It's for the meaning, right? For the lifestyle that you want to have. And so she went off and did her thing. And then when I checked back in with her, she's like, yeah, no, I'm doing it consistently now. Like every time that comes up, I'm doing it because I have a very clear why. And so I think all of us, to kind of carry and pull us through any doubt or challenging times, or, getting punched in the gut, and just feeling like it's, like, am I really cut out to do this? Many of us have had those experiences. And what I've experienced is the reason why I keep getting back up, the reason why I keep going is because I know, like, I see a future. I see something that I want to create. I see something, or people that I want to have an impact on. Like, there's a clear reason, a clear kind of driving purpose that connects to the why. And without that, I think it's very challenging for people. And that's why so many people give up, because they started doing something, but they weren't really committed. They weren't really dedicated. They weren't really all in to doing it. They were just kind of dangling their toes in the water. And that makes it very easy for the moment that you start to feel that doubt, or whatever you want to call it, that you just go, yeah, this water's a bit cold. I'm going to take my feet out and go to, the warm blanket. Well, entrepreneurship and building businesses is not a warm blanket all the time. I mean, you can have the most expensive cashmere blanket, as you build your business up, but at many times you're naked in the cold, right? And you're asked to run up mountains naked, and it's not fun, but you do it because you know what's going to happen when you get to the top of that mountain. You're not only will you feel great, but in many cases you're doing it because you're going to make a bigger impact on other people, whether it's your own family or your clients or society or community. So that's number one. Number two, you asked about how do I weigh risks?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it depends on what it is. From an investment perspective, I will only make an investment if I'm comfortable with the idea that all of that money might disappear. So it means that I will never take a chunk of money and put it into like a massive chunk and put it all into just one thing, unless I'm very, very confident. What I'll typically do is make a smaller initial investment into something, see how it kind of progresses, learn more and more about it. And as my level of confidence increases, I'll then invest more and more into it. So that's kind of from a financial perspective. But in terms of trying things, we'll always just ask, well, what's the downside of doing this? Does it impact, could it impact our reputation? Could it impact our profit margin? Could it impact our culture, our values? What is a negative potential impact of doing this? And we'll weigh that against the potential positive impact. But almost, without question, we're always going to ask ourselves, how does this relate to our values? So in our space, you see a lot of people out there who will talk about different things. It comes across almost kind of like a bit internet marketing, hypey, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not trying to talk negative about anybody. People do what everyone can do whatever they want to do. But for us, that's not our approach. We're a family business. We look at our clients like family. Our values are very much about, family and travel and international citizens, people that appreciate different cultures and, and religions and languages and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's certain values that we have. And so we lead with those things. We make decisions based on those things. And that helps us to weigh, where we're making investments or where we're willing to take risks. But we take risks every single day, Debbie. I mean, we try new things. And again, we don't know whether or not they're going to work. But what we found over the years is, as you keep trying new things and layering on more and more stuff, some of the things that don't, again, work right away will work over time. And our podcast, right, would be one example of that, in the early days, you test it. And if you just go like, well, is it working or not? It's not necessarily leading to business directly. We can't go like, oh yeah, this podcast episode got published and now we generated, X amount of new revenue. It doesn't work like that. But we know in the case of today that we hear nonstop about people who listen to the podcast episodes, or they're driving 5 hours and they'll listen to a whole bunch of them all at one time. Or, oh yeah, I reached out to you guys because of your podcast. So we know there's an impact there. And that's why we keep doing it. But even early on, when we didn't necessarily have that, we knew that good things would come from it. And so that's why we committed to it.
Yeah, I love that. And also, your Japan story, just for your own feedback. How long ago was that, by the way? Just that.
So that was probably around 11 years ago.
Because when I signed up to a newsletter, that there was like a little sequence. And yes. The Japan story was part of that. And you're an excellent storyteller, because I was like, oh, why can't you just send me the next email immediately? I want to know what happened next. So and in that Japan story, I think I got a really good feeling about you, and this family feeling came out, this vulnerability came out in the Japan story, this side of you that's very open to sharing your own things that weren't quite going right. The Japan stories, by the way, everybody, you've got to go and sign up just to hear the Japan story now. But that made a connection with me. I mean, we'd never spoken, but I kind of felt a little bit like I knew you, and I saw a bit of that vulnerability side in that story. And it was very funny and well written as well, very funny. If you wanted to share a bit of vulnerability now, is there anything going on right now that you're thinking, oh, I wish we'd never started this? Is there anything that you kind of wish you'd never got round to doing and maybe could step back from?
There's nothing going on right now that I would say I wish we're not doing. I mean, we're in a place right now where we've been, seeing pretty tremendous growth throughout the whole last year and a half of, during COVID. We've been building our team and adding team members, working with many new clients. I mean, we've just seen demand continue to increase. So I feel very fortunate for that. I know it's been a very challenging time for many people, but our business has certainly benefited and just been kind of on a growth trajectory for quite some time. So there's nothing like that. But in terms of vulnerability, I mean, that's what I can say, and hopefully this might help some listeners and viewers, is that I was not comfortable, being vulnerable many years ago. Like that for me is certainly not natural, especially when I was younger, building businesses, because I tended to be one of the younger people around the circles that I was in. I had this mindset that I needed to always look more professional and, dress a bit more professional. And I couldn't show weakness. I had to. And so that was something that for me, telling my story or telling our story as a company, and being open about the challenges, the mistakes, that's something that, does not come natural to me. My background before I got into business, in my early years, in school and so forth, I was in sports. Sports was my life. So I was very competitive. I still am competitive. And I think that competitive nature was you don't show your competitor weakness, you got to keep going. And so that's kind of where that mindset came from. But what I learned over the years, and it started, I think, as I began to interview more and more people for our podcast, and just heard from multiple different people, there's no collusion, there's no connection, except for that many people said they shared vulnerable stories. I mean, one person I remember talked about how one of their children had passed away. Another talked about how they had gone through a really crazy illness, or things that it's like, why are you talking about this on your business website? Like, this doesn't make sense to me, right? And I didn't view it as negative. I just didn't get it, because it's not something that I would have done. But as I talked to them and I asked them questions, every single one of them said that being open, sharing, for example, that one person had a very serious drug addiction, another almost committed suicide, like all these things that just doesn't make sense to me at that time as a business perspective. Like, why would you share that? Doesn't that show weakness? And what I learned is that every single one of them said that the more vulnerable they were, the more open they were, the more their business grew, the more that people actually started to engage with them, and just felt like, yeah, you're also a human being. And I think that's a missing piece for so many entrepreneurs' mindsets and businesses, is that in fact, the more vulnerable you are, the more open that you are. It doesn't mean that you just keep throwing all your negative thoughts and mistakes, or whatever you want to call them, publicly. You want to pick and choose what's appropriate. But certainly in the day and age that we're in, the more that you can break down the barrier between what people see and think like, oh yeah, here's some very successful person, look at everything they're doing, like I don't really connect to them. I mean, business is about relationships. So if you can help to connect with someone or make that connection point easier, they will tend to want to connect with you more, engage with you more, feel like they like you more, they trust you more, right? And therefore they're going to be more willing to invest or kind of take that leap of faith, because they don't see it as big of a leap of faith. And I would just offer one illustration of this. Think about the people that you're closest with, your friends, your family, whoever it might be. What are your conversations about? Well, typically your conversations are like a lot of vulnerability, right? You're talking about a lot of stuff that's going on in your mind, or mistakes you've made, or challenges you've had, or why you're feeling depressed or happy, or, relationship stuff. Like, you're just being very open. Well, if you can start to work that into your business communication to, you and your brand, people will typically resonate a lot more. And that will attract more of the right people, while repelling or pushing away the people that never really would engage with you anyways.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I'm going to change the subject entirely now, because I'll just do these things. When was the last time, in person, I'm talking personally now, when was the last time you did something for the first time?
Okay, good question. I did something for the first time. Okay. I bought a boat recently. Oh. And so that's a first. I've been on boats before, but I've never really driven a boat much myself. So that was a first. And that certainly, anyone that has a boat and knows when you first learn to park a boat, that can be
boats is the most fun, not.
Yeah, exactly. It's, it's a learning experience. The way I describe it to people, it's like, you remember when you had to learn how to parallel park your car, right? And you'd hit the curb, or except you're moving water, and there's, other boats. So it's a bit more complex. But yeah, that would be a first for me. I have two youngish children, two daughters. So I would say I encounter firsts with them almost every day, right? Challenging situations, times where I want to, throw them out the window, but I don't, because they're just so adorable and lovely. And I have to recognize and realize that they're never doing anything wrong. It's how I kind of process what's happening in my mind. So yeah, it's a good question. I have to think about that more and actually ask myself, what have I maybe not tried that I could or should try more? But that's what comes to mind right now.
Brilliant. And is there anything I haven't asked you? I'm cautious of the time. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to tell us?
I mean, I would just encourage everyone to, so a big saying that I share with all my clients, and they always kind of joke about this because we say it so often, but it's the concept of imperfect action. I truly believe that every single person has just immense, extraordinary potential inside of themselves. And typically the reason that they're not seeing the results they want isn't because of a lack of knowledge or skills necessarily. It's their mindset. It's their own, it's themselves, right, that are holding them back. And if you just start to move towards what you want to achieve, you will learn something. You may learn that, you know, your approach is not the right approach. But at least now you learn something and you know that you need to adjust. And that's still better than, you know, not actually getting off the starting block. But you might also learn that, hey, it works right away. And now you get to enjoy that success sooner than you would have. So that would be my kind of parting thought for today for everyone is just, it might be in your personal life. It might be relationships with someone that you haven't talked to in a while or shown love to. It might be in your business, but there's likely something that you really want to do that would be truly significant for you. But you haven't started, you haven't moved forward. And I would just encourage you to ask yourself, what's holding you back? Why haven't you done that? And then what would be the first thing? What would be one thing that you could do today? Even if it's a quick text message, even if it's putting something in the calendar, even if it's sending somebody an email or, you know, updating a plan, but something that would allow you to take action. And I would just encourage as much as possible to not, when I say take action, imperfect action, it usually means not just to build more things, not just to plan and think and kind of build inside of your, you know, your office or your house or whatever it might be, but it's actually getting out of the building. And that's a bit of kind of a, like, metaphorically speaking, it's not necessarily you have to leave your house, because with COVID times, not everyone could leave their house, but you need to engage with other people. And that, again, could be a phone call, could be an email, could be a text message, but do something, put something out into the world. Because again, you'll learn and you'll either be able to improve or you'll be on the right track.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, how do people get in touch with you? Where should they go? What's your website? And how do they find out the Japan story? And everybody's got to hear the Japan story.
Yeah, I'll just give you one place then for the Japan story, and then people can learn other stuff from there. So if you go to consultingsuccess.com/blueprint, you can get a compilation of our most popular articles as a 47-page guide called the Consulting Blueprint. And you'll also then get the Japan stories that Debbie's talking about. Yeah, I hope that you'll find those helpful. It's consultingsuccess.com/blueprint.
Wonderful. Michael, thank you so very much. It's been wonderful to speak to you, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Debbie.